Yeah.
So I was only half joking about we needed your help, Dr. Katz, because we've been talking about some interesting challenges.
Okay, well, fire away whenever you want.
Well, I was waiting for YouTube to get fired up there.
Yeah, it should be going now. We got
Okay.
it. We got it up and going. So.
It's the break on DKNY. DKNG, sorry.
You finally got the break, huh, Peter?
I didn't trade it, but I was watching it. I wasn't confident it would happen. So anyways, Dr. Katz, welcome. And yeah, the thing that we've been talking about in the room, it's been a choppy couple of days in the market. The market seems to be in a position of indecision. And when that happens, often it gets a little more difficult to trade because patterns that you're used to sort of working fail or don't work. And it's resulted in lack of confidence for a number of us. Even our fearless leader, Andrew, was saying he's sort of was losing confidence in his own trading, despite the fact that he's got, this phenomenal track record behind him. And a few of us were commenting, like, I've noticed I can show trades where, normally I would happily and calmly hold through the move, stick to my strategy, and off it would go and famously work. Instead, I'm watching it, and a tick goes wrong, and I'm like, I got to get out. And then I get out, and of course, sure enough, it actually would function. And it of course, that leads to frustration and a further erosion of your confidence. And it's just an interesting phenomena that it's, several of us have noticed that we're falling victim to that, I believe, as a result of the market. But wanted to get your take on that.
Sure. So I think big picture, what this speaks to, and this is, again, a similar thing in athletics and sports. I think the ability to be nimble and flexible and creative during your trading is very important. It's an important characteristic, so that you're not getting caught up in what is not happening or in your level of discomfort, but constantly thinking about ways to manage kind of what is happening. So again, when things are not happening in the pattern or the mode that we're used to, it creates, like you said, a level of discomfort. And so this is where people need to not be rigidly adhering sometimes to certain things. It doesn't mean that you avoid your process or your discipline, but within that, there needs to be a level of ability to think more openly, creatively, and nimbly make some changes on the fly. So to me, the discomfort and the unsettledness is just part of the fact that the market presents itself in different ways, and that can be unsettling. We like kind of consistency and continuity. But try to take this on as a challenge, and it really does test one's ability on the fly to kind of try to make different decisions where you delicately balance your process and your discipline, but a willingness to make, again, sometimes some creative adjustments when adhering to a certain plan kind of might be problematic. So I think what you're experiencing is a common thing. And if you trade long enough, you're going to hit those moments, and it's not going to be the most pleasant.
Well, it certainly isn't. I can tell you that. So, but yes, you're right. It's that flexibility. It is flexibility without, like you said, sacrificing the principle. Because I find what happens is I start to question the strategies which have been successful, and often that leads to me making poor decisions. So you have to, I guess, I sort of think that flexibility only goes so far. Like you shouldn't be so flexible that you break, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but you don't want to abandon kind of the process and the discipline and the plan that has been working for you. So you're right. So the hard thing about this is that it's not binary. It's not like, okay, to hell with it, I go to automatically to plan B. But, and sometimes there's a tendency for people to want to do that, and they abandon their strategy. And frankly, the people who do that actually are exhibiting the least amount of confidence. The hardest thing is to have the belief and trust and confidence in yourself that even through the adversity, you're sticking to what you know to be a workable system, although even in the moment it's not working, and then try to make the subtle kind of changes and adjustments that might be helpful. Again, very delicate balance, but people who are constantly changing their patterns with the wind is a sheer indication of a lack of confidence, and that is not usually a useful strategy in the long term.
Agreed. Absolutely. Well said. Yes, indeed. So just a reminder, guys, if you have questions, don't be afraid to throw them into the chat. I think a few of you have already, but as always, we usually start slow and then get this glut of questions. So I'll tell you, if you get your question in early, you have a better chance of it being addressed. So please do so right into the chat like Steve is. Thank you, sir. And I will let Mike maybe take over from here. We can't hear you though, Mike. I see you. I see your lips moving.
And Mike's day continues on the downward trend.
Yes, indeed. I see frustration on Mike's side, so that's obviously
and he's
not
doing a
going
very
according.
nice job with the somewhat fake smile, which he's trying his best.
Yeah,
Can
can't
you hear
him on
me?
YouTube either. There.
Can you hear me now?
That's a Mike voice. Yes, sir.
That is a mic. There we go.
You are
Yes.
like the
I
variety
am
guy.
hiding the subtleties of my frustration and anger. This is many hours of trying to remain calm.
Well done.
In the midst.
Well, you've come to the right place, Mike. We're here for you, my man.
Yes. Yeah. So there gets some days there of frustration. So I'll start with one of their questions, but I know yesterday I got a good question that I got to get in before we're done today.
Okay, go
and
ahead.
it has to do with my
head of the line.
Yeah, but I'll get it after we get some of these. So Steve, he started off with, what's the best way to take your mind off of a losing streak by not breaking rules because you're just not reading the charts well? A little bit of kind of what Peter was talking about. How do you get your mind away from that?
Well, when your mind is on a losing streak, you're thinking about the outcome. And really what's the best way, the only thing that's going to make you feel better is to have some more positive outcomes. And partly when things are not going well is to be able to identify some of the things that you might be doing incorrectly or poorly. So as hard as it is during those losing streaks, if you can look and try to identify either in your journal or your notes to see what some of the patterns might be that you may not be following, whether it's your stop loss, whether it's your discipline, your process, your strategy. Because if you can notice some identifiable errors or things you could do better, that's a pathway to success. So I think, again, it's putting your mind more on the process and not getting caught up on like, oh, that's another losing trade or another losing day. Now, all of what I'm saying is far easier said than done. But you want to constantly look at ways to improve as opposed to kind of just beating yourself up for going through a difficult stretch. Because difficult stretches are, an inherent part of the trading process.
Yeah. You are so right in that fact. And it comes from, I think, somebody mentioned, Hans mentioned that he used the probabilities derived from data and research to kind of build the confidence. And I'm a firm believer in that. And maybe, Peter, you could touch on that too, because I know you journal a lot as well. Having stats and numbers can help build your confidence, but you still got to trust in yourself to trade it the same way without adjusting it. And that's the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah, Mike, because, there's kind of a recency bias. So sometimes when you're doing well, maybe actually for not so good reasons, you're feeling good about yourself, but like yourself, you may be ignoring the numbers. And sometimes when you're going through a tough stretch, it feels like, even though that stretch might have been a day or two, like you experienced, in the moment, it feels like a year or two. And
Yes.
So this is where you need to step back and kind of get the bigger picture and look at the aggregate, like where you might need to remind yourself on those, at the end of those pretty rough days. It's like, hey, look, this month has been generally pretty good. I feel like hell today, but actually that's more of an aberration. and I've been able to identify a few things that I didn't do so well these last couple of days, so that you don't give a skewed or a disproportionate weight to what you have experienced recently, which is generally what we tend to do psychologically and emotionally.
Yeah. So this is a question. I brought it up yesterday, actually, in the chat, because it's the middle Wednesday of the month, and I've actually gone back. So out of the 26 months of live trading that I've done, 21 of the months on the middle Wednesday of every month is my largest loss of the month. And I can't figure out why that is. It just magically appears.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. There is a prop firm that I work at, and I have meetings every 2 weeks with a whole bunch of traders there. And there's one guy where every time I have a meeting with him, he's down on the day. So my opening salvo now when I call him is, okay, John, how much are you down today? And it's become the kind of the running joke. So I don't know. I have it. I know you use that information, and sometimes there's coincidences there. I would be hard pressed to provide you with some kind of deep psychological meaning associated with that middle Wednesday, other than to say that might be a good day to take off in the future. That those 12 days a year off and do something enjoyable, knowing that you've saved yourself a lot of money by not trading. There we go. There's my suggestion.
Awesome. And that was my solution yesterday. It was like, I'm just going to drink beer next Wednesday.
There we go. You could drink expensive beer. It's probably not nearly as much money you're spending on the beer than you saved on trading poorly.
Yes. You're absolutely right in that one.
Okay. Nicely done. Now, if somebody says to me, hey, Dr. Katz, I trade poorly 365 days a year, and my suggestion to them is take the whole year off. I don't think that's a viable financial strategy for most people. So I don't want people to extrapolate from my suggestion to Mike and take that to an extreme, please.
Yeah, you definitely don't need to take it to extreme. So we got Daniel M, who's asking, what you believe is the best mindset to have as a trader when you're going through a red day?
I think the best mindset is, again, composure, is a process-oriented approach, and a willingness to not get too focused on the outcomes, but looking, if you can, as to what is taking place and what corrective actions, if any, need to be taken. Because as we've talked before here on many Thursdays, sometimes you could be trading relatively well and you're losing some money. So I think a key thing is you got to identify whether, it's a red day because actually you've been trading poorly and there are identifiable errors that you can look at and correct, or whether it's just one of those days that, you've actually done a pretty good job and things just haven't gone your way. So again, this is where people sometimes, their emotions are dictated by their P&L, but the P&L, as I always say, the baseball player who gets up at bat and hits 4 line drives and swings at good pitches, and each of those line drives gets caught, may not have gotten a hit that day, but they've been disciplined and they made good contact, and if they continue to do that, the hits will fall. Whereas the guy who's swinging at pitches outside of the strike zone, even if he gets a couple of hits, is not going to be a likely long-term positive strategy. So I think you need to go behind the numbers, so to speak, and look more carefully at what you're doing and not get caught up so much in the P&L.
Yes, excellent. So, Abi, sorry if I mispronounced that. As you can tell, there's a lot of loss questions this week. The markets have really have gotten at us.
There's a lot of pain out there. I get it. Okay.
There's lots of pain this week. I will say before getting to the question that just being in a community like this really helps, because coming into this show and just having the last 2 days I've had, the built up frustration, but then coming in and listening to Peter talk about how he's been going through it, Andrew's been going through it, you got other traders that are going through it, it helps relieve some of that. That's why it's
let me just say one thing, Mike, about that. I think the community is great for that. And let me just say, I'm a big fan of a sense of humor. And it's not that trading isn't a serious endeavor and a serious business, but I do think at times, especially when things are rough, that there is an importance of being a little lighthearted at times, seeing some humor, being able to laugh at sometimes oneself and maybe with each other. So I don't want people to feel like I'm not being serious about this, but I do think that sometimes because of the difficulty and painful period, that to add a little levity in the process of talking about real important questions is useful.
Yes, definitely. Oh, I just got to close that so I can get back to the question. Where'd it go? Sorry. Uncle B here asks, if you want to build a daily green red performance chart specifically for psychology, what are the top 2 or 3 things to start monitoring, measuring, tracking over time as I did good or I did bad? I'm assuming that's what goes with red or green for the day.
I would want to be increasingly aware of kind of your emotional makeup when certain triggers happen. Often when you feel things like fear or anxiety or impatience, certain strong emotional reactions you have, if you could kind of write down when those occur, because I think each of us is prone to different kind of emotional, psychological reactions under pressure and under adverse conditions. And usually we have patterns. And I think a hugely important thing is to understand the kind of, what the catalysts are, what the triggers are for those, because that can often help. Insight doesn't necessarily lead to behavior change, but becoming aware of our own patterns and being a little more self-reflective can be the first step in terms of taking steps to correct things. So I would kind of see what your own emotional reactions are, make sure you document that, what the highlighted ones tend to be for you and when they occur, and jot those down during the day and the type of trade you're in and what's transpired.
Yeah, definitely. That's always good to track your psychology, especially before and after and even during a trade, because I've noticed myself that I'm different all the way through it. And you can be really good leading up to the trade, really good during the trade, but then the outcome can really throw you emotionally. And it just kind of helps you get onto the right spot. So I'm reading Abi's a question here, and what I'm taking from it is when he gets into a trade, he's very quick to book profits, but then when it's going against him and he's losing money, he's trying to hope for the best, and he's very quickly will hold on to losers longer than he's willing to hold on to his winners. Any way to break the habit? To break out of it?
We talked about this before about the discipline. If the first step would be if you have stop losses intact, that's a hugely disciplined thing. And if you've now, because you're making a little money on the upside, you kind of widen your stop losses because for reasons that are more emotional and maybe greed oriented as opposed to kind of more rational. That would be a little warning sign as well. So I think the first step is, are you disciplined and do you go in with stop losses and do you adhere to them? A lot of people say they have stop losses and then they blow by them and they provide some kind of post-mortem rationale as to why they did that. And I'm not saying that at times certain things could happen in a trade which would make you kind of adjust the stop losses. But if you find out the pattern is that it's more subjective and you just like getting stubborn because you want to trade to go your way, and so you're willing to take more and more of a loss, that really speaks to a lack of discipline and not adhering to your plan.
Yeah. And those are the ones that hurt the worst, is when you violate what you intend to go out. That's the one that gets me. When you have your plan.
Yeah, well, you know why, Mike?
And
yeah.
you and you don't follow it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because what that does, we've talked about this before, not only do you lose money on the trade, but actually it erodes your sense of self. I mean, it really, people underestimate kind of how much when we don't follow our discipline goals and patterns, it makes us actually underlying feel less good about ourselves and less confident because, we feel like not only did I lose money on that, but I can't even kind of be disciplined enough to follow what I've laid out to doing. And that actually leaves people with a very bad feeling and erodes people's sense of confidence and trust in themselves, which is really problematic.
Yeah, definitely. So Ravzilla is asking, is it counterintuitive to think that you should be looking outward instead of inward? Not quite.
I think it's a combination. I think people, let's just take two extremes. One of the reasons I like doing what I've done, and when I first started doing this kind of work with traders like 15 years ago, financial folks tended not to be the most insightful or self-reflective. So I think a lot of everything was an outward approach. And then people started to appreciate over the last 10 or 15 years how much psychology plays a role in the trading process. So, but I do think the flip side of that is if you're too much in your head and you're constantly focused on your emotions and what you're going through, then you're not really focused on kind of what's happening trade-wise. So this is a long-winded way of saying it's a delicate balance between having some awareness and insight and of your own emotions, but also staying outwardly focused. And at times that may ebb and flow because, if you're not locked in concentration and focus-wise on what's going on in the markets and you're in your head, you're not likely to make good trading decisions and you might miss things.
Yeah. I love this question from Archer. I do great in sim, but not live. Why? It's a great question.
This is the age-old question where the athlete says, I do great in practice, but I lose, in games, I'm terrible. We've talked about this a little before, and I don't mean to be humorous. I mean, this is a common scenario. So, Archer, I don't want you to feel like this is an unusual. You're not alone in this. And the transition for a lot of people is difficult because when you have real money at play, it has, there's a lot of emotion and actual real finance attached to when you're trading real live dollars. There's a lot more at stake. So there is a natural tendency for that to become a more emotionally charged, greater emotional volatility associated with the financial volatility. So this is why I know Mike and I, during webinars and on Thursdays, we've talked about this, is that when you make that transition, really start with very small size. So you don't feel that the dollars are mattering as much. You get used to the kind of just the emotional volatility associated with putting, dollars at work. And then slowly as the emotions start to settle down, then maybe increase your size and put more money at risk. So that's kind of a first step plan. Sometimes people go into head first big and it's like incredibly overwhelming and difficult.
Yeah. and don't worry, Archer, I had that same thought today. like why? It's just there. So we got a question from a YouTube member that's joining us. And just talking about scaling into a position, and when he scales into the position, he gets very emotional because now there's more risk that's involved. Is there any way to kind of minimize that emotional reaction once you add into a trade that's going in your direction?
Well, so if that is, let's just say first of all, if that is a strategy and approach that actually has worked for you, two things can be true. You can continue to do that and have some level of anxiety that's present with it. That's, both things can exist at the same time. I think actually, I could be scared when I go up on the diving board and look down at the water, but I still can get myself to dive. Both things can be true. So the first step is that been a functional, useful, successful strategy to scale in? Or is your emotional response, the anxiety that you mentioned, by scaling in, an indicator of a strategy that has actually not been beneficial? And maybe you should decide on the size and the risk of getting into the trade from the beginning and not scale in. So the devil's in the details a little. I think you need to kind of assess for yourself again, is this a successful strategy? And then maybe you need to give yourself a little more time, that the anxiety or concern is just a byproduct of adding more risk in. Or is it an indicator of actually something that is not working and is a warning sign to maybe you should change your approach and maybe go in with a certain size and just do that as the total size of the trade?
Yeah. And scaling in is an art in itself. I mean, Thor does an excellent job here in the chat room, explaining how he does it, and he's got a very logical and methodical way that he approaches adding into a winning trade. He never adds into a losing trade, always adds into a winning trade, but it's very methodical and practical how he does it, and that's probably the best way that I've seen it do it. I'm still not quite down to that point. So with that, we're coming up on the market close. We got some announcements and everything. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Katz. It was a pleasure having you.
Very good.
And we look forward to seeing you.
Glad to be with you
on Mindful Monday.
Yes, very good. And good week be with you guys and everybody out there in the community. Have a good evening. Okay.
You too. Thank you, Dr. Katz.
Thank you, Dr. Katz.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Katz. Appreciate it.
Hey, Brian. Welcome. So as we're getting into the close, let's do earnings real quick. There's not much on there, but there are a couple that maybe people are interested in. We got AMAT, Applied Materials, Baidu, and IQ that will be reporting today. Baidu and IQ are pretty late, so we won't stick around for that, but AMAT will be somewhat right around the close of the bell. And tomorrow morning, there's nothing of interest for the morning. And we didn't do the member trade of the day, did we?
No.
So let's get that in here real quick. So the member trade of the day goes to Han out there for an ABCD pattern on Apple. So took a nice, speaking of adding in, right? So gets in right at the moving average. Excellent stop with that resistance or support that's right below there. Holds on for a decent move up. Takes 3-4 partials up there near the top during the pullback, and then when it starts, this is the one thing I really like in his post. He mentioned this, is that he free rolled it on a separate strategy. So he added back in on the break of the high of the day. So he took Thor's free roll strategy along with John's break of the high day strategy, added to it, got a couple more partials, and then got all out when it came back down to his break even. So excellent trade overall. Couple different strategies applied as well as
very nice. Yeah.
So excellent
Well
trade.
done. Whose trade was this again, Mike?
So Han Bing Su.
Okay.
Diddly doodly.
Yes.
Way to go, Han.
There it is. There he is. See, there he is right there at the chat. Han. There it is. So excellent trade.
Nice one.
Fantastic. Well done then.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, it's a good.
Free roll.
yeah,
Free roll.
I like it. And then for announcements, tomorrow we'll reveal the trade of the week out of the 4. So there won't be a trade of the day tomorrow. But if you missed it, we had a webinar that's posted, Green Trader Tax by Robert Greene. It is a ton of knowledge. Probably, unless you're an accountant, it was way over your head. But that's why we have bring in the experts to speak intelligently on those things. So if you're a U.S. trader, highly recommend you take a look at it because it will give you some good ideas for the upcoming tax season. Then next week we got Kreda, who will come in with finding your mental edge, as she is now going to be working with BBT on the mental edge section of the Psychology Center, and that is how to hone your mental skills and be able to apply them to your trading. So I'm looking very forward to that. And then if you'd like to try our chat room out there on YouTube, you can use the code premarket24 or closing bell 24 for access. And it gives you a week at a discounted rate and also gives you access to the closing bell show. And I'm 6 minutes over, and hopefully Peter's out of his trade since I did not give you 30 second warning, Peter.
That really isn't your responsibility to have to give me a warning, but I do appreciate it. And yes, I got out of everything. My Tesla trade came back and wicked me out, which is a little unfortunate. But then Cisco I got out of a while ago when it started to pull up. So I'm good. We're all flat.
So that is good. Now we're kind of waiting on the AMAT.
Yeah, just keeping an eye on the AMAT here. Now, it doesn't trade well at the best of times, although look at the wick. I didn't see it move, but some magic happened.
Just a weird trade.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, Rafzilla, I do believe the discount for lifetime membership is over.
Look at that. It is trading so few shares. Look at that candle was almost entirely the spread.
Jeez.
So there's just so little. Well, that's crazy.
Yeah. Be careful. The spread can be really bad.
It jumped from like 5 cents to 50 cents.
Yeah, but it's
look at it now. It's 60 cents.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. This is not tradable.
Hard
Really.
how people trade this.
That's how I felt about oh man, I was so mad today.
It's funny you see shares going through like 10 shares, 19 shares. Like who's trading 19 shares of this?
Not me. I am done for the day.
There's a 30 and a 50. And
it hardly seems worth it, does it?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess if you can trade one share, I guess if you don't pay a commission.
Yeah.
You can trade it.
So Peter, YouTube's asking if you traded AMD today.
This morning, it was actually I traded it off the open, but not since. Yeah, it was only it actually was my best trade of the day, and of course Thor had to have a slightly better entry than me, but yes, I was very happy with the trade.
Good.
But no, I didn't trade it the rest of the day. It was ugly the rest of the day.
Yes, I know. AMD can go. AMD got me good. One and done on AMD.
Stay away.
Yes, I know. I should have listened to you, Brian. And it goes back
pick your
to
spots with AMD.
I know.
Like any stock. That's all.
Well,
come on, guys.
Don't be it goes back to what Dr. Katz was saying, right? You're fine as long as you stick with your plan. It's when you don't stick with your plan that you get frustrated and upset with yourself. And that's kind of what happened with me today. I think I got the trade. AMAT isn't really doing much, so I'll pull up this awesome AMD stop out trade maybe.
While you're doing that, Mike, I just wanted to mention to any of the traders in the room that are in Toronto, in and around Toronto, we still trying to see if there's any interest to have a meetup in Toronto this weekend. I am going to be back in the Toronto area and happy to come to Toronto and have a meetup with people. Sunday would probably be a good day, but I could do Monday as well, but that's usually a work day. So, and Peter has also mentioned that he may be I was going to say a surprise, the extra surprise, but it's not much of a surprise now that I mentioned it. But yeah, Peter would be, as said, he may be in the neighborhood and would also be able to. So that would be, you'd get 2 for the price of 1.
Look at that. You're there.
Anyway, it's posted in the forum.
I see that. Let me just, I've got the link here because I was just posting against it.
Great.
Found it, Brian. So yes, I will be passing through Toronto, so I can stop. I can arrange my schedule to do that. I'd love to see our Toronto members with all their masks on.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Or we can meet.
And
Maybe we can find a place that has a bit of an outside patio, and
yeah, that would be perfect. Or
we don't have to all wear our masks, but we will be conscious of being socially safe.
yeah,
There won't be any.
Yes.
There won't be any
Brazilla, I'm not.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say there won't be any hugging like there usually is at our meetups.
Yeah,
But,
that's true.
Yeah,
That's
but we.
true.
Yeah. So, anyway, yeah, we'll just see if there's any interest, and if somebody in Toronto has an idea about a good place to meet, that would also be helpful. So, all right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh yeah, I would.
So,
if I was in Toronto, I would go.
Ralphzilla, I'm not.
Yep.
I don't roll like Andrew does. So no helicopter for me.
Good old-fashioned driving.
Yeah,
So
driving down in the old Kia. So no, nothing fancy here.
You're not
Yeah.
taking the Porsche?
I don't think so. We're probably picking up my daughter along the way in Kingston, so it has a back seat, but it's not really comfortable for a 6-hour drive. So,
Yeah.
although I could shorten the drive, I could make it 4 hours, assuming I don't get stopped. But my wife, I may be divorced by the end of it because my wife is really not fond of that
Yeah.
approach.
going
Yeah,
fast.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Man, I get nothing. I almost don't want to drive on vacations because I get nothing but grief about my drive.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, AMAT is kind of stuck at the VIEW app now. It's
Yeah.
not really doing.
It's not doing anything. Yeah, it's really not that exciting.
No.
But guys, please post if you can. If you're in the Toronto area, can meet with us, and especially if you have recommendations about where to meet, house to offer. I don't know, or just a place with a patio.
A backyard,
Yeah,
place with a patio would be good, or
be some good ideas, anyways. And Andrew and Brian and I would be happy to meet with
Great.
our Toronto traders.
Yeah.
Usually we
And-
get good meetups in Toronto. Like the last few we've had have had tons of people. So
Yeah, I remember the last one we did was down down near the waterfront. It was at a place where it was kind of like a market too, with a restaurant in the back. Trying to remember, can't remember what the name of it was, but
the last one I went to was in the fall. And that was it was trying to remember. It was off of King Street, I think, or it was in the downtown core, anyways. But
yeah, that might
maybe
be
there's
the
one.
one.
Maybe there's one after
Nice.
it that I didn't go to. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Andrew and I are we're based in Vancouver. And my buddy Mike's down in Portland, and Peter's an Easterner.
Easterner. Well, not
Easterner.
to the standards of an Easterner, but I guess I am certainly more East than you.
Definitely more East than me.
Yeah.
So, anyway, guys, we
right.
had down day on the SPY, down day on the small caps at the end, and again, the Qs technology was the place to be if you wanted to be green. So,
The place to be if you want to be green.
yeah, other
I
than
like that. I like that.
other than Ireland, I guess.
It's very green in Ireland. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Very green in Ireland.
Especially on March 17th. So, yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna drop here and have a great night, everybody. We'll see you all in the morning. And
All right,
I'll
Brian.
be-
Thanks for joining.
trading the open, and then I'll be off packing my bags. So, we'll see everyone in the morning.
Yep. See
Later,
you,
Brian.
Brian.
See you guys.
Later.
Bye now.
Boom. There we go. That should be fun to meet up in Toronto. That'll be good.
I think so. It's usually fun.
So, good question about the RVOL during pre-market, either from DAS or Trade Ideas. So DAS does not give you pre-market volume, and Trade Ideas doesn't give you pre-market volume either, but Trade Ideas will post the previous day's relative volume at the close of the market. So you can get that data from Trade Ideas in the single stock viewer. So that should be there.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about RVOL for that day or for previous days? Because I mean, that day.
I think he's talking about the RVOL for that day. But in the pre-market, you can pull up Trade Ideas, because some people may get confused. If you pull up during the pre-market, if you pull up RVOL data in Trade Ideas, that data is not for the pre-market. It's for the previous day. So a lot of times people get confused with that.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially there is no volume for it to be relative against until the market's open. So
correct.
Most RVOL, like you see in DAS, by the way, it counts up until that point in the day compared to previous days. So the RVOL can change over the course of the day as the volume profile changes. So just be aware of that,
Yeah.
which is actually a useful feature. That's a feature, not a bug.
So,
But
yes. So with that said, everybody I'm going to say bye to YouTube. Thank you for joining us.
thanks, YouTube. Don't forget to give us a like.